Sweet Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
So I think it's pretty safe to say that Sledgehammer games have been given the short end of the stick when it comes to Call of Duty. If we look at their record history, we can see that with Modern Warfare 3 in 2011, they were forced to make half the game, including the multiplayer and Spec Ops, because Infinity Ward was currently losing half its employees in trying to restructure their own organization. So while that was going on, Sledgehammer had to pick up the slack and bring a pretty good, solid Call of Duty game, even if it wasn't as great as people thought it could have been, as it was following up Modern Warfare 2, which was considered one of the best Call of Duties at the time. So we can already see that they were forced to hitch onto a game they weren't even working on. And then they were given the time to actually make their own Call of Duty, which we saw with Advanced Warfare in 2014. Unfortunately, this would also be the first time that Activision decided to start experimenting and putting supply drops into the game. Whether or not this was Sledgehammer's idea, we'll never know, but I think it's a good thing to suggest that Activision might have been involved in that, considering that they've been getting even more outrageous with Black Ops 6 and their microtransactions. But in 2014, Advanced Warfare came out, and it was a rather mediocre game at best. It wasn't necessarily a bad game. I don't think many people would have called it a terrible game, considering Call of Duty Ghosts from the year before was considered a travesty, but I think it was more of an average experience and more of a safe bet, considering they had a new environment to work with, and this is what they brought us, a rather safe experience with a terrible third mode and a rather boring multiplayer experience at the time. You could have Titanfall as an alternative, really nothing special with Advanced Warfare. But maybe they just needed more time to cook, maybe they had other ideas they wanted to go for. So a couple years passed by and we get a new game from Sledgehammer called Call of Duty World War II, and this was supposed to be a boots on the ground experience returned from Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, and Black Ops 3, and unfortunately, despite initial hype, it didn't quite live up to what most people were expecting. A lot of people have actually suggested the reason for this was because they wanted to do Advanced Warfare 2, and this could be why we see so much of that influence in Modern Warfare 23, because they never gave up on the hope that they could make another futuristic game. Sledgehammer has always wanted to make more Advanced Warfare. I think you could tell from the start, that's where most of their passion was. So when we see World War II and eventually with 2020 and Vanguard, we can see that they clearly don't have as much passion to go back to the past, but they're made to do that to be the safe bet. It's always a safe bet to use Sledgehammer because they're usually the ones that can take the fall for it. It wasn't Infinity Ward's fault, it wasn't Treyarch's fault, it was Sledgehammer Games who took the fall for those flops. Which was unfortunate because they actually did have passionate developers. They do have passionate developers. So seeing all of this unfold against them must have been disheartening. And it would only continue to rise as in 2020 they were lined up for another Call of Duty game. But they just weren't ready. With 2020 we were going to be getting a Cold War Vietnam game, which had actually been prophesized since 2014-2017 was that they were going to work on a Vietnam game. And it turns out they gave it to Treyarch. The reason they gave it to Treyarch was apparently because Sledgehammer and Raven saw creative differences, something along those lines. They were just not happy with the state of the game and they were infighting. So rather than put out a game that year, they were actually made to go into 2021. Now that they were in 2021, they had an extra year to develop, but they had no idea what they actually wanted to do with it. Was it going to be Advanced Warfare 2 or was it going to be another World War II game? And knowing Activision, they went the safe route yet a third time in a row and put out Vanguard. Now you might be wondering what happened in 2020? Well, the Vietnam game we were supposed to get turned into Cold War. And while you can see that influence in the actual campaign, and maybe some of the multiplayer as well, it's nowhere to be seen in the Zombies mode. The Zombies mode, as a matter of fact, seems more akin to World War II Zombies, where it's more of a darker experience, at least on launch with Team Machina, and slowly became more arcadey to the zombies that we know and love. So whether they designed this or not is hard to say, but we do know that Sledgehammer made a majority of 2020's COD, and Treyarch had to take over so that they could make 2021, and that's where we saw the safe bet for Sledgehammer's game. And they would pay the price for this dearly. This would be the biggest disaster for Call of Duty in a very long time, and shows what happens when you give a team that has passion a game they don't have passion to work in. Call of Duty Vanguard was a game without passion, love, or care, and that's not meant to be an insult towards Sledgehammer Games. It's meant to show you the amount of shit they've gone through, and this is the result. When you're constantly pushing them against the lines to actually work on these games they have no passion in, instead of putting them towards a game they're actually passionate towards. Let's look at Modern Warfare 23, the latest game they worked on. They had so much passion going into this game. The multiplayer was fixed. Daily community events, the fact that you could get so much for free, a zombies mode that Sledgehammer had to take the reins on because Treyarch actually left them out to dry this time, and yet despite all of this, it's actually a somewhat decent zombies mode that just didn't get enough community support, which is the odd thing because Sledgehammer for the most part on multiplayer wise has always been listening to the community, so that's the first telltale sign that they were left out to dry with the zombies mode, and they had to work on that too. You can clearly see what's happening here with what Sledgehammer was forced to go through. The multiplayer, they had to essentially undo all of Modern Warfare 22, undo that, add their own spin to it, add more community events, listening to the actual community, and that's why the actual multiplayer of Modern Warfare 23 is so damn awesome, is because Sledgehammer had the passion and it shows. And they also decided to sneak in a couple hints towards Advanced Warfare 2, so again, that might be coming up in the future. But even if it doesn't, clearly they have the passion to make a more modern or futuristic game. We've seen that with both Modern Warfare 23 and Advanced Warfare, that they want to go into the modern, more future era and not be stuck in the past with World War II, and Vanguard being the prime examples. Although World War II, they did have a lot of community support because they were listening to the community, Vanguard they did not. Vanguard they had no passion towards it, and that's why it got abandoned as quickly as it did, because nobody wanted to be in that era anymore, including Sledgehammer, so they finally fought back, and Modern Warfare 23 is a good example of what happens when they actually have passion with the Call of Duty they're working on. So now we're up to date. We have Advanced Warfare, Modern Warfare 23, Modern Warfare 3 from 2011, of course World War II, and Vanguard. We have all those games. A common trend here is simply the fact that they're just not given the time of day. Activision either makes them the safe bet, or they take the fall for all of their games. They're constantly the ones who are at fault on Activision's end for the games not panning out well, when in reality they're just being stretched too thin and being put at the forefront for everything when they have passionate developers. They clearly have shown time and time again they've got the passion for community support, and now are actually being considered the top developers right now because of what's going on at Treyarch with Black Ops 6. And of course Infinity Ward has been the worst at communication by far. Treyarch seems to be trying to take that cake from them, but for the most part Infinity Ward is generally considered to not listen to the community out of all three, while Sledgehammer, being the underdogs that they are, have fought back and have become the fan favorite as of right now because of their clear communication. Against every odd thrown against them, and even against the community just straight dogpiling them since World War II launched, they have fought back. They have gotten their act together and have clearly shown that with post-launch support, they are top-notch. With multiplayer design, for the most part, they've actually been top-notch. I did say this about Vanguard as well. Their multiplayer core philosophy is high action fun, and that's what you get with their games. With Modern Warfare 23, with Vanguard, and with World War II to an extent, is that it's more fast-paced than other Call of Duties, and there's a reason for that. That's their core philosophy, is for that high-paced action that we all know and love. And that's why I think they are definitely the underdogs when it comes to this, because they have pushed for this mentality, a mentality that people clearly want, considering Modern Warfare 22 was slow-paced, and not many people bought into it, while with Modern Warfare 23, people very much like the idea of more action-paced, fast gameplay. So that's what we're going to be seeing from them, and that's what they've been putting up every single time they make a Call of Duty game. So they have fought back against Activision. They have fought in the hardest of all three companies right now, arguably more than Treyarch, as Treyarch has had multiple years to make multiple Call of Duty titles, while Sledgehammer has been in an assistant studio, main studio, assistant studio, and now back to main studio with Call of Duty games. They were always the assistants, and then they were made the main, and now they're assistants, and now they're main again. So they're constantly switching back and forth, and ultimately I think it will be a good thing if they stay as a main studio, because truly they have the talent, they have the passion there. It's just they're given the absolute worst odds every single time. You might say Treyarch had worse odds, and we could look at Black Ops 4 for an example with the development issues behind the scenes, but the problem with that is that the main competition was Fortnite. Fortnite was the biggest problem with 2018. Not necessarily the issues with the core philosophy of Black Ops 4 or the core of what they were trying to develop. It was going to be a sequel to Black Ops 3, and we got that. We got that with Blackout instead of a campaign to compete with Fortnite. And you can't compete with Fortnite. Only Fortnite can compete with Fortnite, okay? So that's just not going to happen. But they tried and put their foot forward because they had an idea and a passion, and they had the main development behind them. Whereas if we go with World War II, they only made that game because Advanced Warfare and the advanced games in general were getting sick of. People were getting sick of those games. So they made World War II, but there was just simply no passion from the team to make it. Nobody wanted to make it, but Activision sludged them forward anyway. And that's what we ended up getting for 2017, and why Call of Duty was on the download from that year, and people were waiting for Black Ops 4. And then Cold War came in as another Black Ops game, because people were quite frankly sick of getting World War II games made by Sledgehammer Games. So we didn't see them for a long time, and then the next time we do see them, it's with Vanguard. Yes, Vanguard was not good, okay? No one's going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you Vanguard was good. But that said, the post-launch support before the end of the game, which is when they completely abandoned it, was not bad. They were listening actively to the community, but again, they just didn't like what they were set up with, and that's why we haven't seen a new game from them yet, is because they're working on something that's going to finally have actual dev time behind it. And once we see it, even if it's Advanced Warfare 2, I think people are going to like it, because it's going to have Sledgehammer Games working on the multiplayer the way they want it, without any belligerent from anyone else, without any assistance or mind-numbing infighting from any of the other teams. It's going to be an Advanced Warfare project, or just a project that Sledgehammer Games is proud of, that they truly want to make. So once we see that in 2027, or whenever their next Call of Duty is, I think that's when we're going to see them become not the underdogs, but the big dogs of the game. That's saying that they're going to be the biggest of the three companies, because that's what the most people have faith in right now, compared to, let's say, Modern Warfare 2 and its post-launch support, and how Infinity Ward essentially cut off all post-launch support and essentially cut off all communication as well, because they didn't want to listen to what people were saying and change their core philosophy. Or if we go into Black Ops 6, how we see that Treyarch has become so obsessed with patching what the people actually like, patching directed mode, even though everyone used it for camo grinding because it made it so much easier for the weaker guns, since it's all headshot challenges. It blows my mind how their post-launch support has gone so much worse with this game, even compared to Cold War. When Cold War they were open communications, here they're being relatively silent about it and are pushing it for Season 2 to get actual updates done. That just tells you how much has changed over there since Black Ops Cold War, and Black Ops 4 in general. Black Ops 4 got a ton of communications, but we'll leave that for another video. All I'm saying is that Sledgehammer Games is the most open right now, and being considered by many to be the actual top studio compared to Infinity Ward and Treyarch. And I'm not saying that those two studios have completely fallen off, or that Sledgehammer is objectively the best, but what I am saying is that despite fighting against most of the odds, against all the odds a developer could face, they still put out things that the community wanted to see post-launch. Now, I do not excuse having shitty launches, okay? I have been one to stand for having a stable launch. Your game should be stable from beginning to end. There's no reason to have a shitty launch, but if you are going to have a shitty launch because of things out of your control, like with Sledgehammer and how they had so much infighting with Vanguard, and even World War II and Advanced Warfare to an extent, you better put out post-launch content that everyone wants to see, and they delivered tremendously when it came in this regard. They delivered a whole hell of a lot when it came to Modern Warfare 3, when it comes to their other games as well. They just put out so much post-launch support to make up for the fact that their launch was quite frankly terrible. Quite frankly, just not worth it getting at launch. But that said, they did put out post-launch content support. They put out a lot, and quite frankly, they didn't have to. They fought well above their weight class in this regard. They did so much they didn't have to do, and I can give them all the kudos here. Sledgehammer, if for whatever reason you're watching this video, even though I have like 600 subscribers, please know that I really do respect your work culture, and I definitely respect everyone on the team for putting out all the content that you have, despite fighting against such shitty odds. You've had to put out against the worst odds a developer of the three can face, so you have my respect, and I really look forward to what you're going to put out next. That all being said, what do you guys think? Do you think Sledgehammer is the best, or do you think they're the worst of the three? Do you like their games, or do you think they make the worst Call of Duty games? Let me know in the comments below, but thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please slap that like button and subscribe. I could always use a new addition to the Dark Ops army. and consider hitting the join button as well. It supports the channel more than you know. It supports it more than you already do, which I absolutely appreciate. But there are many perks. You can get these videos early, you get member badges, all that good stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is Dark Ops, signing off.